Okay. What? All right, let's
Whatever.
get going first. I'm going to call the July 18th Village of Gates Mills Council meeting to order.
Eton,
Here.
Allworder,
Here.
Press, Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner, here, Welsh. Can we
I
have?
move to excuse Laurie Deacon.
Second.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Okay, we're going to do the minutes and then I'm going to take a couple things out of order out of the agenda. So the first thing is the minutes from the regular council meeting of June 20th, 2023.
There were two corrections made prior to the meeting on page 2. Under the comprehensive plan, it talks in the end of the first line, 17 of 25 members should be 23. We'll make that correction. And on page 4, under the resolution for emergency services, fourth line down, the initial 17% increase was reduced to a 3% increase. It says 2, so we'll change that. Other than that, are there any other corrections? We have a motion.
Second.
Eton.
Yes.
Allworder,
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Press, Steinbrink,
Abstain, wasn't here.
Turner,
Who the hell was that?
Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is minutes of the special council meeting of June 29th, 2023.
One correction that I got prior to the meeting on these minutes, page 4, the third full paragraph, it says Councilmember Aton stated he rarely has seen situations where the lowest and best bid are the same. It should say are not the same. And we will make that correction. Anything else?
Move to approve. Second.
Aton.
Yes.
Allworder,
Abstain. Wasn't here.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, next is, I'm gonna go to the reports. I'm doing this because Steve Zimborski is coming and will give his report and whatnot. So I'm gonna start with the police report. Chief?
Mayor, members of council, everybody should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'll be happy to respond to any questions you might have. Mr. Stratton?
Speak into the mic.
Sorry about that. I've got a question. I presume we're capturing data now from the new traffic cams.
Yes.
What does it tell us about the number of people who would be getting tickets? Were we issuing tickets? Where are we versus our initial ideas when we approved this a year ago?
I did put some information on the back side of my council report there, if you had a chance to look at that. So this is what I'm going off of. So numbers have come down for sure. I mean, just based on our 60 days worth of data collection. And I'm taking them in weekly increments because over 60 days, obviously the numbers are greater. I'm more concerned with 7 days, last 7 days. So the last 7 days, numbers are better than the previous 7 days and the previous 7 days, before that. But I'm satisfied with where they're at. We are seeing, and this isn't a problem that's going to be solved. I mean, you're never going to stop speeding. It just doesn't happen. So what we saw in the past 7 days was, and I have it right here and I have the comparison here. So in the past 7 days, we did see about 3.12% of the vehicles traveling over 60 miles an hour, and that's down from 3.94 the week before. It's down from about 6.5% the very first 7 days. So, that'll give you an idea. And all the signs are not up yet. They'll probably you'll start seeing these around the village starting tomorrow. I talked to Signal Service just the end of last week. They had to order more signs. They're going up. We can't really start. We're not there yet anyways, but the program cannot start till all the signs are up, and they should be up here. You should start seeing those, very
Okay, so
soon.
about half of what it was a year ago.
I think so, yes.
Which says maybe people are paying attention.
I think so. The speeds, again, the average speed of all the vehicles, of all the passes for the eastbound camera only, is about 49 miles an hour. And that's good. That we think that's a positive. But of the remaining 3.5%, the average speed is 62.3. And that's what we're focused on.
Thank you.
Quick question. Doing arithmetic, I'm not good at arithmetic, but if we've got 7,000 cars per day going in one direction, that's 14,000 a day if we do both directions roughly. Guessing. No reason not to
You
get
see, you are good at math.
Yes, I think we're going to be
7,
so correct. When you look,
so 3% of that is 420 citations potentially a day for those going over 60 miles an hour.
I don't think it'll be that great.
No, I go with me. So that means 400 people are eligible for a ticket. How many are you going to choose? And how many are you going to?
Well, if they're clear violations, then they'll all be cited.
If there's 60 and let's assume they're all clear, we can identify the driver and the car and all the rest of it. If that's the number, how many do you think you're going to process per day?
Well,
And
Whatever the number is, I mean, however many violations there are.
can you do 400 a day?
So put it this way, and I was going to report on this. So we have, just for the eastbound camera, in the past 7 days, we had an average of 214 cars in the past 7 days going by the eastbound traffic camera in excess of 15 miles per hour. We were able to, between the four of us who are assigned this task, we've been able to accomplish it by working together. And it doesn't take long. It's a little tedious, but by working together, we'll be able to handle it.
Okay. And then Lyndhurst Court has to be able to handle the citations too.
We have a meeting, we think we have a meeting scheduled with Lyndhurst Court again tomorrow. We had one, in fact, Janet was, I think, we went down to Lyndhurst Court. Was it like 2 weeks ago, I want to say,
Yeah.
Janet? And the judge feels pretty good about it. He's assured us
confident.
that things are, progressing. He feels good, but I can assure you, nothing is going to happen until all the parties, there's 3 phases to it, right? And we're doing our part. They send them over to us. We look at them, we approve them. Once we do that, our job is basically over with. We're doing our part. And I've been very satisfied with the clarity, everything they've sending over to us. The support, everything's been great. So we're very satisfied with what we have to do. Once we're done, it's kind of out of our hands. Then it goes to GATSO, and then GATSO, it sends the notices out, and then Lyndhurst Court gets that through the integration software. So
Okay, thank you. I'm confused on one issue. I understood that each citation we issue costs us $25 that we were going to pay to Lyndhurst Municipal Court. Someone said to me today it was only $15.
that's correct. We were just notified last week on that. I had a conversation with the law director regarding just that thing, and that is correct. It'll be $15.
So we'll make more money than we thought we might.
Yes, we just found that out. I think it was last Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
I got
You know,
a question. What do you do with cars that don't have license plates or have the paper plate hidden and stuff like that?
That could be happening right now. We just don't know because it's only gonna take pictures of the captured license plates. So if you do have a car going down, it may show that, but we wouldn't be able to do anything with that.
I must say the pictures are crystal clear. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think, yes, the mayor, and in fact, I think it was last week, Treasurer Samborski had stopped in. He took a few minutes and, I've shown him the process upstairs as well. And certainly if anybody's interested in just seeing what it looks like, I mean, we're in the warning period right now. There's no like violations of any kind. You could stop in. I'll be happy to show it to you.
One last question, Mayor, if I may. The warning notices, I wonder if anybody here has actually received one. I haven't. I probably deserve.
Talk into the
Sorry,
microphone.
I wonder if anybody here has received a warning notice. I haven't, and I probably deserved a couple,
No, you're, no, I can tell you,
maybe.
nobody in here is going to be receiving one because we haven't processed any. I know the people in here, we haven't seen their names come.
They're still testing.
Okay,
But I will tell you, just as of 4 o'clock today, we have processed 1,450 warning notices.
wow, that's big.
Wow.
That's over 9 days.
And if you get a warning notice and you have questions, does it say on the warning notice who you contact?
Lyndhurst Court,
Lyndhurst Court,
Lyndhurst Court. However, obviously some people are still going to contact us.
but it says Lyndhurst.
It does.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Welcome. Anything else?
So both cameras are working now?
No, just the one is up. The other one, so the conduit for the westbound camera, the pole is up. But the underground is still not there yet. They're waiting on conduit, 4-inch conduit, that's supposed to be delivered on the 20th. So tentatively, they're gonna work on that next week and First Energy will be out to make the inspection on the 27th. That's what we're being told.
Now First Energy is waiting on the boring, right?
Yes, and that's going to take place again, hopefully next week.
That's the westbound camera.
That's the westbound camera, but yes,
Are the cameras catching downhill only, the picture? Or are they also going
Just
uphill?
east.
one east, one west. We have 2 of the 4 hills covered.
But it's downhill in both directions, right? I mean, they both captured cars going downhill.
Yes, the
Yep.
westbound camera is gonna be a little bit further east,
Yep.
so not quite down on the grade, but
Right.
yes.
Is it fair to say that we've made some remarkable work as far as slowing people down already?
I think it
Yes.
has. I mean, I really do. I mean, just again, I keep going back. To me, the most important data is the last 7 days, because things change all the time. So we had 214 on average over the previous 7 days, but we had one real high day in there. 4 of the 7 days were under 200. There were a couple of days, Thursdays and Fridays seem to be heaviest for whatever reason,
Mhm. Mm.
top speed's been, I think, 91 on the 4th of July,
Wow.
257.
That wasn't me.
Afternoon.
You were going 89, I know.
Always keep it flavor.
Believe me, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot. I mean, you get into it and you see, the capabilities of the system. It's very user friendly. So, by all means, anybody, feels like stopping in, I'll be happy to show it to you. So
Okay,
that'll conclude my report. Thank you.
thank you. Next, Service Department, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dave, could you bring us up on your best take on the status of 640 River Road?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say that it's a booming site of activity, but unfortunately, other than a little bit more waterproofing and some gravel backfill, it's not really a whole lot different from our last meeting on it. I have asked him for an updated construction schedule, which I predict would probably be just the same one he gave me 3 weeks ago, but I did ask him for that.
He didn't
So-
respond.
Not yet.
The frustration of this is shared, I think, by certainly everyone around this table and probably everyone sitting in those chairs attending the meeting. From my sense and understanding, we have done everything that we're allowed to do as far as how we issued the permits, how we monitored things, the actions that we've taken when they haven't addressed the permit, particularly on the outside grounds. And yet we're just sitting here with a constant reminder of an incredible eyesore. It's a joke what's taking place. And I know I've obviously talked to you and there's just, our hands are completely tied. I do think while this is a highly unusual event, the fact that it's so prominent for everybody, causing, quite frankly, I think a great embarrassment to our community. We do need to stand back and evaluate not just this process, but But even when we see violations on other permits and covenants, we all know that, you know, there's examples occasionally of a new resident buying a home. Before they move in, they call their landscaper or contractor and have a bunch of trees taken down. And then after the fact, after all the damage, oh gosh, didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. We know that we issue permits based on planning and zoning variances. You know, I don't know what our real teeth are if somebody doesn't quite adhere to it. It gets to probably the first thing I think we should be looking at is what level of fines do we have? Maybe including what do other communities charge for these kinds of things? Because obviously if there's not a lot of teeth after you've cut down trees, then gee, so sad, too bad, and I'll pay it, you know, I'll pay you $500, which is nothing. So I also wonder in the permit process, you know, if somebody's going to build a new house, you can't give them a 3-month permit, but you may be able to give them a 12-month permit with milestones that have teeth or whatever. I'm not trying to solve the problem tonight. I have talked with Lori Deacon. We mentioned this at the last council meeting that, or maybe it was 2 meetings ago, that we want to look at this. She's volunteered to spearhead the effort, and I'm hoping we're going to have some progress in early August and then maybe start kicking it around with council further. But this thing, it's been on my list of things I think we ought to be looking at. And this one's just sort of pushed me over the edge. I think everybody here would share the same concern. I don't know there's anything we can do. I will ask Todd if, you know, is there anything we can do at this point? Is there such a, is there, if there's a safety issue, I did see something from you that, you know, the judge may say, well, then tear down the front of the house.
Exactly.
But is there any other basis? There anything we can do to try to get, I mean, you know, as I understand it, they have a 6-month leeway after the 12-month permit. So we really have to sit on this for another 12 months without being able to do a single thing. And that just galls me. So is there anything more we can be thinking about doing?
Well, I hesitate
Oops,
to talk about,
speak.
I hesitate to talk about enforcement matters, particularly specific to a particular property. We may be in litigation with them, maybe not, but I did speak with Dave today as to potential way to pursue enforcement. And that may be if there is an unsafe condition, a public nuisance, not a private nuisance, but a public nuisance, and a correction order. The problem with corrections orders is oftentimes the correction is demolition, and that's not what the village is
Right.
looking to do here.
Right.
So it's a question of whether we can force work to be done to at least make it a more safe situation and not a public nuisance. But that's all we have. A property owner who gets a building permit has 12 months to commence the work. And if there's a lull in the work, once it's commenced for over 6 months, then they can be prompted, or they can lose their building permit and they'd have to start over again.
Yeah, I have, I've also in whether it's classes or thrown a couple emails out to some of the other building officials throughout the area, because I'm sure this is not, it's very unusual for our town, but I can't imagine it's unusual for other towns. And much of what they're coming back is exactly what Todd said. Well, yeah, there may be some things you can do, but you can't necessarily force them to do the building. If you send it as a violation, all he has to do is correct the violation, and to correct it may mean tearing down, fill a hole in, and now you got a lot. So it may not go the way we would like it to go. So, but everything I'm getting back is exactly what Todd's.
We established a couple of months ago when we first talked about 640, that they had indeed gone through the proper procedures with the ARB to get permission to build a house or to renovate, and then they went again to get permission to demolish. But
Correct.
how about all the little stuff, like whether they could knock down the outbuildings, whether they could cut down as many trees, whether they respected the riparian rights along the river and wetlands and all that stuff. I mean, they must have done something wrong.
Well, the trees, they went slightly beyond what both Chris and I had approved. The riparian, they were within their rights, as far as their, in the clearing the additional trees, that required them to start a, stormwater management plan with us, file it, which they did do. And so we've been kind of watching along that. But as far as the outbuildings, those were in the original approval, those were on the drawings and did say to remove the outbuilding. So that was part of the original. So really the only thing he did outside of the permit was clear a couple additional trees, a little larger area and disturb a larger area, which we've brought him back into compliance with that. So.
Did you find him?
No, again, we don't have the ability to fine people. I want to make that very clear. We do not fine people. What we do is I can file charges in municipal court, Lyndhurst, and the judge determines what the fines are. We don't set, we say it's a first degree misdemeanor, and that's all, which is up to $1,000 a day per violation. But we don't determine that. That's up to the judge.
Did we file in this case?
No, we did not. Because he complied with what Chris and I had requested in filing a stormwater management plan.
One thing's
Very frustrating.
Very.
things odd to me, and I mentioned to Chip today, is the people who bought the house, the original house that was there, the current owners, took out a significant mortgage and a conventional mortgage, almost $500,000. And I wonder if their bank knows that the collateral is gone.
Mhm.
I don't know how this all
A
works.
very attractive front prop on the front of the property. Maybe that's worth 500,000. I don't know. I'm sure Hollywood could use
It
it.
is, we better take better care of it.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So Todd,
Unfortunately.
go back to the point that you just made, that once building commences, if they don't do anything in 6 months, the
If there's a
permit.
delay or a suspension of work for 6 months, the permit is then revoked automatically.
So aren't we in that period now?
No, we haven't approached the 6 months. I think the last work probably was March, April.
The last work, I mean, that's where it becomes
If
interesting.
the
I
permit
mean,
was issued
Right.
January 9th,
Right.
so July 9th would have been 6 months. When the permit was issued, obviously there was work done. since.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Now, is it
Pinpoint
significant work?
that, I-
No. But is it work? Yes.
And
That's-
it simply means the building permit's gone and they have to start over again.
Strange.
So does that accomplish anything?
Yeah, I don't know.
Really.
Don't know.
But I mean, I would think we're 3 months into it. at
Excuse me.
least.
Go
Gotta
ahead.
come to the mic.
Well, just the rolling 6 months. That, I think that, is that what you're asking? It's a rolling 6 months, 6 months period.
No, I wasn't asking that, but it's okay. It's okay. No, I'm just thinking we're a couple of months into this.
Right.
Do we just wait another 3 months and then we proceed?
Well, the problem is he's probably doing an hour of work here and an hour
Right.
of work there. So his
Right.
definition of
Yeah.
work is work.
Right. Yeah,
Noticeable work.
right.
Being done.
Yeah.
To start the 6 months again.
Okay.
Well, Dave, I
They
guess
were there and
that-
cleaned
that
up the
regard, at
porch
least-
the last time. And, you know, what date was that?
Yeah.
That was a few, you know.
That was end of
couple-
June or
yeah, I
middle of
think so.
June.
And then the last time, I think, after our last council meeting, after I talked to him, a machine shows up for a day. they do
Right.
A little more gravel, a little more cleanup, and then it's.
So
gone.
that's the end of June.
Right.
Well, Dave, maybe a suggestion is, as you periodically drive by, take pictures so that you can have some evidence that, you know, here's the picture from 2 weeks ago and 2 months ago, and, you know, be hard pressed. you
Yeah,
Put one concrete block in place, but
Right.
there's hardly progress.
right. No, I agree.
Give us some teeth if that's an angle that we could be using. So. All right,
It's very frustrating.
Barry.
If there are no other questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next is fire department.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the June Fire Department report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
You know, Chief, as you wind down in your retirement. I wish we had tracked the number of burnt food over the years. I think the rates come down, but we haven't reached zero. So maybe next month you can hit zero as your final report to council. So
Well, we'll see. I don't hold a lot of hope in that, but well, we'll see. If there, is there, if there is a
Mike?
question.
I was curious, we're 6 months into the year now with our data. It looks like we're running double on the EMSs. Any reason for that? You can speculate?
Aging population,
Well, I did.
every department,
So.
it depends on who moved in and moved out. There have been no mass casualty incidents to bring those numbers up, so they're all basically individual calls. We're just receiving more and more calls for assistance. People are using the 911 system, the EMS system for transports that probably shouldn't be done. It is a very challenging thing. You don't want to get into a position where you're telling people, don't call us. That could go sideways very quickly on us. We are looking at, patterns, and we see that with, our larger users, Aria House, Ensemble Center, Gilmore Academy. Those are our two biggest, single address, if you will, users. But I have to tell you, through the years, we have had single residents here that match those numbers. And as their health declines, then that problem goes away. But during that, period where their health is declining, they will call the ambulance more and more and more often.
Especially if they're by themselves.
Yeah. If they don't have family or any other way, to get there. So yes, the numbers are up and the dollars are up also.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
step up to the mic.
The treasurer's report here was printed out. Is there any reason that these three reports, Frank's, for example, couldn't be shared with the people who are here so that we could ask intelligent questions as well?
They're all online before the meeting. All the council reports are online. That one was not online until today. That's why I printed a few.
Okay, but police, these others are not online or
They are.
are?
They are online.
Okay, all right. Before the meeting?
Yeah.
On
like
Fridays.
The Friday before the
Friday
meeting.
before the meeting. Okay, thank you.
That concludes the fire department report.
Thank you, chief.
Chief.
Okay, Steve, welcome. So next I'm going back on the agenda now to pay ordinance 1275 for $424,000, $963.54. We need.
Quick question, the two Inglebrook charges, that's the finishes up the coffee shop construction.
Say that again.
The two Inglebrook construction charges on the 7th and the 29th of June.
I have to review, because I know he's been bouncing back and forth between projects. One of them I know is, but I don't know that, I'd have to check the actual.
Okay.
I can email that out.
Okay,
It was probably the lower level restrooms that was for the ARPA grant, the local government
okay,
grant. And then they also did the work, I think, on a new air conditioner at Burton Court. Yes, I can send those out.
move to approve.
Second.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrück.
Yes,
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, next is financial report. Steve?
Thank you, and thanks for letting me be 30 minutes into the meeting here. Thanks for adjusting the schedule, Mayor. So we're halfway through the year financially for the village. The June results were provided to the mayor, the clerk, and council in advance of the meeting. My report was just posted this morning. I do try to usually get that out the weekend before. It just wasn't going to happen this particular month. For the month, the general fund revenues were $413,000, consisting of $349,000 of muni income taxes and $64,000 of other revenue. As you know, our income tax revenue is based on when the billing agencies bill it and when the taxpayers remit it and when it comes to us. Real estate taxes are right on the money from last year. We're at 98.5% of where we were last year, so that's good. We caught up in what was a slow start to the year. I think if you remember January and February, we were a little slower for real estate taxes, and we had guessed that that was due to some of the slowness in the billing by the county and then the remittances by taxpayers and remittances to us. So we're back on track for that, and we should expect the full budget amount for the year as the underlying basis for the calculation has not changed. Municipal income taxes were good, $349,000 in May. You'll recall in the last few financial reports, we talked about the 23 receipts being less than 22. We identified the causes of that being 3 large taxpayers and a refund that was due to a 4th. And we also talked about the projections that Rita was providing to us, which were less than they had previously provided. We're making some progress on that. We are with their updated projection of $2,125,000, which is the same number we had last month. So they have not updated their projection, and we haven't asked them to either. There's not that much additional data that came in 1 month. We still are foreseeing a shortfall of maybe upwards of $450,000 this year. Other source revenue of $452,000 is favorable to last year by $95,000. There are higher receipts in almost all the other revenue categories, except for ambulance income. I came in at the tail end of the chief's remarks. I'm not sure if he covered this or not, but Janet and the chief have been going through the calls, both identifying the sources of any misuse or repetitive calls, as well as looking at whether any of those calls could be billed to third parties. And our ambulance income could potentially improve in the second half if we find that some of those calls are indeed billable. We've also been in contact with Mayfield Village on that. So we're quite aware that that's kind of hurting us in 2 places. 1, more calls at more expense, and 2, less reimbursement for the calls. We also had rental income higher from the cell tower, as I reported about 2 months ago. Our rent from the buildings is also up. So the other revenue number is comfortable at this point. Expenditures for the month of May were $358,000. As I report monthly, our monthly expenditures are normally $450,000 to $500,000. Some people bill us, some vendors bill the village on a quarterly basis, i.e. Mayfield Village on ambulance, as opposed to a monthly basis. So you can find some swings month to month. Overall, though, we are tracking fairly well. The police department is spot on budget for 2023. The fire department has spent more money primarily because of the ambulance and EMS costs and more emergency calls. The service department has spent more on the front end loader that we purchased last month, a 6-figure item, as well as upgrades to the Mills building space and the new front end loader. I mentioned that, and some additional maintenance. So for the 6 months, the village has operated with a general fund shortfall of $233,000. Recall the financial records are on a cash basis, and we're halfway through the point in 2023. At this point, I don't see anything that would be a particular alarm that we haven't already mentioned. Obviously, if the municipal income taxes come in better than the lower projection, that would be a plus for all of us. At the end of June, the cash balance was $7,577,000 compared to the beginning of the year of $7,811,000. Finally, as you know, we have 23 other funds that are required by statute or contract to account for receipts and expenditures that are of a special purpose. Those funds aggregate $1,872,000 at the end of June. I see a typo here, excuse me on that. It is June. We've also collected the various ARPA funds and have in hand about $380,000 committed in the ARPA fund for the culvert replacement before any other fund amounts would need to be used. That's it for my prepared comments. The report was presented to the website, it was published to the website this morning. We'll go back and republish it tomorrow. There's two date errors I caught in here. Oh, Janet, way to go. Janet gets a star. Thanks, Janet. Any questions from council?
Steve, this municipal income tax, what was the magnitude of the refunds? Did Rita tell us early in the year that they had to issue relative to last year?
Recollection, about $120,000.
So in essence, just doing some quick rounding here, we collected $1.3 million in income taxes year to date, had to refund $120,000 if that's the number, versus $1.64 million at this point last year. Our income tax revenue for last year was 3.2 million. We knocked, or 3.1, we knocked 500,000 or 600,000 off for budget purposes. So I still don't buy that Rita knows exactly what they're talking about because they've given us different numbers at different times. And it just seems like if we're really, other than the refund, which is real, I get that, but I'm looking at the underlying trend. I'm trying to understand we're essentially a little over 300,000 behind over the first 6 months. If you doubled that, that'd be 600,000 behind, which is what we budgeted. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I think that they know what they're doing and we're going to come in 2.1 million. We'd be falling off a cliff if we ended up at 2.1 million for the balance for the whole year. So, you'd think it's a fairly steady rate. So other than refunds. So I just think it's worth keep pestering them to get some sort of explanation. The numbers don't tie to 2.1 million, period. So.
We maybe have been a little more forthright and conservative in presenting, I won't say the lowercase numbers because there aren't higher case numbers. The higher case numbers are what we may want to think we may come in at. The facts are the people that process the returns and the data have good information. How clear is their crystal ball, Chip, for the next 6 months? We'll see. We also have a new individual representing our account at Rita compared to the person that did it last year. They may have a slightly different approach in how they're forecasting. But they did thoroughly go through large items last year, as I reported last month, and coming forward and saying, do we think those taxpayers are still here and will they pay those amounts this year? And that's the basis primarily for the reduction from the 3 million to the 2,125,000.
We had that many high earners move out?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
high
think-
owners
I
are a
think-
two-edged sword, and I'm glad we've got them. But if we lose them, it can be an enormous impact. I'm concerned about how we project our income tax proceeds going through the next 5 years. And I think what's happened this year is salutary. I think we need to pay particular attention to income tax, which is so different because of its confidentiality than real estate taxes, which is transparent. House Bill 920 means the numbers don't change. So forecasting real estate taxes is relatively straightforward, but income taxes is now larger than, well, last year was larger than real estate taxes. And I don't know how we're going to get a handle on how we project that as we do our long-term planning, particularly as we try to convert the comprehensive plan into actions, some of which will take money.
Good points. I think what we're trying to do too is establish a nice relationship with the people at Rita to ask them for more information. As I mentioned, I think in a meeting or two ago, they don't, in terms of these projections, when cash comes in, they don't attribute it to a specific year. So if we gave that refund in 2023 for a tax in 2021, nobody's going back and saying, oh, 21 was too high, reduce that. It just shows as a 23 reduction.
Yeah.
Likewise, if somebody put in a big estimate this year for 23, and filed that with one of their vouchers, that comes through as a 23 tax, even though it might relate to 22. So a lot of us that are the accountants in the room or in the world, you know, would like those amounts put in the right years. Their way is the cash basis, which is we'll report it when we receive it, when we pay it in that year. So that adds to a little bit of the variances, let's say, in terms of being able to forecast it.
Well,
I think though, we're, you know, between Janet and I think we're being more aggressive with Rita. And they've been responsive to all of our requests. We can't blame them for anything at this point.
I rather doubt that Rita knows the answer. I mean, what happened was everybody worked in their office. And along came COVID and everybody worked at home.
Right.
And now the pendulum's swinging back the other way. I don't think it'll go all the way back, but it's certainly going to go back to some extent. The trend hasn't completed itself. So
Right.
good luck for Rita or anybody else who thinks they can forecast it.
At this point, I just rather, you know, be as conservative as we can, be forthright with council and with everybody in the villagers. This is what we know. The numbers are lower than we were hoping. Let's hope that they turn out to be higher. That's better than holding on to a number that's too high and then surprising ourselves in October that we don't have what we were hoping for. Thank you, Michael.
Agreed.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is mayor's report. So a few announcements. Our band concert is this coming Sunday at 5:30. I hope everybody can attend. The grand opening for our coffee shop should be next week, starting on the 24th for Addie's Cup. I hope everybody will stop in there sometime during the week. All of council received the comprehensive plan. I hope I have not finished it. I hope you're enjoying it. It is a good reference and resource in the future for council. I want to come up with a date for a workshop. So I would like our council to select either August 12th, these are Saturday mornings, Saturday, August 12th, September 16th, 23rd, or 30th. And hopefully everybody will pick the same date and let me know.
Right?
And we'll have a workshop starting at 9 o'clock and I'm sure it'll go for a good few hours, but
Karen, are those going to be public in this room?
it's a workshop. Yeah, it'll be a public meeting, but it's a workshop for council.
Okay, but I mean, will the audience be allowed to ask questions and what have you?
Yeah, we'll see how the time goes. My answer would be yes, but we'll see how the time goes.
I think more people will show up.
We'll have to see.
If they believe they can ask questions. If they can't ask questions, I doubt they will. They'll just-
Well, you know, I kind of depends on council, doesn't it, as to how many questions? We might have to have a second workshop.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that. One would hope that if they come and we run out of time, we'll make an announcement at that selecting the next date and hopefully they'll come back. After all, it's all the residents investing in this, but it's a resource and it's a reference guide. So we're just going to have to see what comes out of it. It's quite interesting and quite enjoyable so far, and I have not gotten through all of it. But I'm very thankful to Chip and Sander for orchestrating it and giving such a good presentation.
So Karen, can Janet send an email out with those dates and we'll
Yes.
confirm?
Any other questions? Okay. Next is the appointment of Chuck Spear to Historic Review Committee. And Chuck is here, and I think he'll be a great addition.
That'll teach
Is
him to ask.
Chuck
about
old enough to be on
There
the
you go.
historic? Is Chuck old enough to be on the historic? Don't we?
We need a motion to approve.
I motion.
Second,
Yes.
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 Thank you. Next is clerk's report. Okay. Thank you. Next is our Gates Mills Land Conservancy, and we have Nat Smith here to present to us. Nat?
Welcome, Nat.
Well, let me start by saying thank you to the mayor and council for giving the Conservancy the opportunity to do a mid-year report. Every 5 years or so, the Conservancy updates the strategic plan. We did so again starting last December and had that plan approved by the board at the May meeting. And I'm not going to go through it in detail, but any council member that wants to have it, just contact the Conservancy and we will send it out to you. I will say that it reaffirmed the Conservancy's primary mission of preserving natural and scenic resources through either easements, deed restrictions, or targeted property acquisitions. So that is still and has been the mission for the Conservancy for the last 35 years. We had 7 initiatives that I won't go through in detail, but I'll mention a couple. One is we plan to develop a tree canopy committee with the village. And part of that effort will be to identify public funding that's available through Ohio's forestry program. And that process is at the very early stages, but it's something that we are excited about and we'll be working on over the course of this strategic plan. And another item that's one of our initiatives is to increase the visibility, the transparency, and the public outreach of the Conservancy. So in that regard, I wanted to update you on how we're doing that so far this year. In addition to the pink sheet, we had 2 online newsletters that were published during the course of the first half. First one was dealing with the Wilderness Corridor and had articles about tree canopy and the former lifeguard station that is now the environmental center and part of the Mayfield School District. The second one was published at the end of June, dealing with the Heartland Corridor, which is the historic district in the village, and talked about the founding of the Conservancy 35 years ago and covered articles about green infrastructure, bees and pollinators, and beech leaf disease. And in addition to that, we had an article in the Stroll magazine it was an interview with the president of the Conservancy talking about the importance of easements. And then in May, we had 3 events out at the Sherman Road Preserve. These are walk and talk events where we have a naturalist taking small groups of people around and discussing topics like backyard conservation, invasive species, and best practices for maintaining local tree canopies. And at the end of one of those events, we had a rain barrel workshop that was held at Marston Park, and we had 19 people show up for that, both from Gates Mills and outlying communities. So we are making a real effort to communicate to the village and to council what's going on. And I want to mention something that's coming up in September. We have a collaboration with the library and Mayfield School District at the Environmental Center, which I suspect many of you may never have been to. And this is a Preserving Gates Mills Uniting for Land, Water, and Tree Preservation. It's going to be a series of lectures. There will be events for children and tours of that facility. And I just hope that some of you put it on your calendars. It's Saturday, September 23rd. So let me turn now to the only land acquisition we had last month or last half, and that was a very small transaction on Berkshire Road where a former section of the interurban railroad became an orphan property held by the state, and it was offered to, I think, to the village, and then they came to Gates Mills Land Conservancy, and we acquired it through a transfer from the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corp. And that is on Berkshire Road, and we'll have a sign up there at some point, but it's in the shape of a J, and it comes off Berkshire and then goes back into the deep woods that are between Berkshire Road and Epping Road. And we have a few other parcels like that as well, but we figured we're as good a party to hold that as anybody in the village. I want to turn now to just talk a little bit about finances for the Conservancy. In 2019, we acquired the Clark Preserve, which is on Sherman Road, and that's one of our largest preserves, 37 acres. And we purchased it for $1.1 million. 2/3 of the purchase price was paid in cash. 1/3 was paid with seller financing to the tune of $380,000. We've been paying that off slowly since 2019. And over that period of time, it paid down a little bit more than $100,000 and spent $40,000 in finance charges. So in March, the Conservancy's board decided that it was time to pay that off rather than incurring those finance charges going forward. And we paid down the remaining balance of $267,000. Turning to fundraising, as of the end of June, membership contributions are $19,000 from 90 donors, and that compares to a budget of $32,000 for the year. So we are tracking well with what we would expect to get for membership contributions. And looking at the financial statements for the first half, and I sent a complete set out to you so you can look at more detail if you're interested. But for the first 6 months, we have revenues of $17,003 against expenses of only $9,007, so a favorable surplus of $7,600. Most of that is timing. Some of our big expenses come in the second half of the year. Our rent, for instance, our insurance cost, our costs for doing our financial audits. Those expenses will come in the second half of the year. And we expect to end the year with a revenue of about $32,007 and a break-even budget of $150,000. Looking at our cash reserves at the end of June, we had a total of $573,000 in cash, of which only $88,000 of that is levy funds. And that's probably a relatively low level compared to our historic levy funds. But as you may recall, part of our agreement with the village is that at the end of this 5-year cycle with the levy, we have to have $700,000 in reserves. And that means that the maximum amount we could spend on land acquisition over this 5-year period is $300,000. So it has always been the intention of, I think, both council and the Conservancy that if a property comes up that's of interest to the Conservancy and we don't have enough money to purchase it, we would certainly come back to you as the council and say, we think this is worth saving. Would you contribute or help us support this effort? So that's where we are from a cash position. And then finally, before I conclude my remarks, I just want to mention the 4th of July parade. We had our best effort ever under the inspired leadership of Celeste McClung and her intrepid team of float builders. And our float was led by 2 ambassadors. We had Mr. Eagle and Mr. Fox, and they had 95 trees that they handed out through the Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, I guess. And the judges thought that we were good enough to get 2 awards this year. We got Best of Nature, which we get most years, and we got Most Beautiful Float as well. But perhaps the most significant event came at the end of the day when the Girl Scouts decided that they would donate the proceeds from their lemonade stand at the parade to the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. So they are giving us $200 that they collected. And I think this is an indication that the next generation supports conservation. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
just want to mention that the Conservancy was a formidable competitor for the ultimate award of the parade, but my wife, being president of the Garden Club, was very happy that the Garden Club still won the overall award. So you guys have more work to do, so.
And we're planning on it next year. We're going to sabotage the float of the Garden Club. I think that's our only.
I think that's what you're gonna have to do.
Yeah.
What, you haven't mentioned membership. My sense is there's been a lot of renewed, certainly the publications and,
Well, the
I mean,
publication-
vibrancy. Is the membership up?
The membership is 90 members at this point. And that is about 10 or 15 more than we had at this time last year, I think. As I recall, typically we've had between 160 and 200 members give support outside of their tax support to the Conservancy every year. So I think we're tracking a little bit ahead. I will say that after we handed out those trees, we had 200 hits on our website the next day, which is not typical for the Gates Mills website. So there was a code on on each of the trees, and people apparently used their cell phones to see what the website was all about. I think we're in good shape in terms of where we expect to be for membership. Chris.
Mr. Smith, for the first 25 years of the levy, you basically got it all, except for a small administrative piece. In 21, council decided to keep 50% of the levy for its own purposes, cutting you in half. They also, at the same time, saddled you with an obligation to create a permanent fund to take care of all the properties you've got now to perpetuity.
Right.
You just told me you paid off the Clark note.
Mhm.
I guess it's sounding to me like the cupboard's bare. Over the next 5 to 10 years, how much discretionary money do you have if you were to acquire further property?
Well, that's what I said earlier, Michael. We would have 300,000 to spend on property between now and the end of the current levy, unless the village were to contribute funds from their portion of the conservation monies. And my expectation is if we have a property that's of interest to the Conservancy that exceeds our capacity to buy it, we would certainly come to council and say, you have these funds. What do you think about supporting us in this acquisition?
I have an observation really, not just for you, but for the council. And that is that I looked at the financials, and to me, it seems as if combined, the Land Conservancy and the village, we have about $1.5 million that we could spend on conservation, whatever, before the end of the levy, which is the end of 2026. And that's a lot of money, $1.6 million. And I don't think we have a plan as to how we're going to use that. And if we want to buy land, so be it. I think this 50-50 was fine. As King Solomon determined, 50-50 isn't always the right answer. And I think we really ought to be thinking about what's the way of optimizing for the good of the environment of the village, the entire 1.6 million. That's my number. I mean, it's probably roughly correct. And I worry that we don't have a plan. Now, I'm encouraged by the notion of a tree canopy committee, but I want to see who's on that, what its role is, what its charge is, and I want it to get started soon, because this is a problem that is going in the wrong direction at now. So I like to look at this thing as $1.6 million of money, not how much you think you have left because you have to save 700 and all that. I mean, I think if we combine this in our heads, not organizationally, in our heads, and had a concerted, prioritized program, we get much better bang for the buck when it comes to overall conservation. So I do hope we put our heads above the turret and say, okay, we're one village, 9 square miles, 2,000 people. We've got quite a lot of money. Very few villages have $1.6 million at their disposal over a 4-year period. I'm talking to the end of 2026. We do. And I don't see us yet with a clear plan as to what we're going to do with that money. And I wish we did. I wish we had a plan.
Well, David, I can certainly say the Conservancy would support that type of effort. That's our intention, to work with the Village Council to put that type of program together in the canopy. But the other thing I want to say is that that money that you're talking about, the 1.6, isn't really in hand yet. That's what's
Oh, no,
coming.
no.
So what's important in terms of conservation is making sure that you have dry powder. Because none of us know when a property is going to become available. And so if you go and spend that money that you have on the side of the village, it won't be available when we need it. And we don't know when we're going to need it, but I would be surprised if there isn't a property that comes up in the next 5 years that both the Conservancy and the village should say, you know, this makes sense to save it.
Yeah.
And if we've spent it, we will be handcuffed.
We've talked about that and working together and that the Conservancy would come to the village. So I don't think see a problem with that. The tree canopy is more complicated than I thought it was going into it. And we've also got, Sandra and I had a quick meeting with Brian Zimmerman from the Metro Parks, and he's pledged somebody within their Metro Parks
Great.
to help us and whatnot. So I think it'll get going and get traction, but it's slow and steady.
But in my view, it's the second highest priority coming out of the comprehensive plan. The first priority is safety, making sure that doesn't erode in any way. And the second is conservation. And I'm just pointing out that the $1.6 million to me seems like a lot of money. I don't know what we can do with that, whether we have the people or the know-how to make the best use of it. But it's an amazing opportunity.
It is, and we have to
I
keep
don't
an
see-
open mind and work together on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. The sooner the better.
I agree with you, and I think when we get into our comprehensive plan discussion, certainly the first two whole sections of the plan talked about not just tree canopy, but this thing called scenic views, which really is, in my interpretation, the definition of the ambiance that we all think about in our village, and how to preserve that. I know that Rob Galloway made a very interesting point that that's been one of the missions of the Land Conservancy since the beginning. If you think about driving along River Road going north from Cedar into the village center, the amount of land that's been preserved. So that builds on that, and of course, the tree canopy. So I'm hoping that certainly is we help to prioritize those things, and your number's interesting. I did want to just comment the 700,000 that you mentioned, Michael, that the dilemma is, and what we faced before and we would face each time the levy comes up, is if the levy was ever turned down by the voters, then the funding of the Land Conservancy would stop. And yet the stewardship requirement for all the land that they own would continue. And the Land Conservancy Board felt that a 700,000 endowment or reserve fund would be necessary so that in perpetuity. What that really means is if that money wasn't there, then the burden would fall on the village. So it's really just saving that money from the village. If a big project came up, we can have a good, honest debate whether that's a reasonable number. Does it all have to be funded now? That was the effort. But to me, that's one area right there that it just means that we postpone the risk. Now, is there any risk of the levy getting voted down the next time around? It got approved with like 76% of the voters this last time. So that may be a very minimal risk. And so we could use some of that money. So I don't think Nat is showing us the accounting, and it certainly says that for the accounting, the cupboard's, almost bare. But if they have a need, I think we can have a very fruitful discussion. That was always the intent. And it's in the contract that they're supposed to come to us if they have a need, or certainly welcome to. And so I don't want to leave anybody the impression that we're leaving the Land Conservancy high and dry. I don't happen to view that from a council perspective. But that was the framework, and it's underway, and that's how they're trying to operate. But and Nat and I have talked about that. And if a worthwhile property comes up, I hope we figure out a way, and I think we can. So anyways.
Thank you, Nat.
I've got just a quick couple of comments. First, the community outreach piece I think has been fantastic from the Land Conservancy, the updates, the newsletters that's come out. That's been great. And I just a couple of questions. The interest rate on that loan,
It was 4%. So
Oh.
we spent 40,000 since 2019 and paid off a little more than the 100,000 in principal.
Okay, and then the proceeds to pay that off came from the levy funds?
Came from the levy funds.
Okay, so then if we added that 270 back into the levy funds, instead of the 88, it would be 350 or 360. And then where's that relate from a historical level, from a funding standpoint of where the,
Well, I mean, the levy funds are at a low balance right now, but we have over 250,000 in operating funds that are unrestricted. So on top of the 88,000 we have in levy funds, if we had a project that demanded 300,000, we can fund it today. And we can't go above 300,000 based upon our contract with the village.
okay, thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nat. Okay, next on the agenda are committee reports.
Yeah, I have a few updates. I apologize. I try normally to put some little dot points under so that there's advance notice, but I've just been so tied up on some things. So first, an update on the charter review. I talked with Sean. The status is that the committee has a draft report. It is each of the members of the Charter Review Committee have or are in the process of providing comments back. The committee is supposed to meet, originally it was supposed to be at the end of July. I understand there's some calendar conflicts, so apparently it'll be early August. And hopefully they then finalize their report, and hopefully what is our council meeting, the August 15th, I think, that they will have their report to council at that meeting. That's their tentative timeframe. Broadband committee is hopeful that the consultant report will be available for the August committee. So got two things shaping up for that. That's the only update I have on that. Cell tower, as everybody's aware, our cell tower is in the works for the Gilmore property. I talked to our consultant, the guy that advises us on the cell tower world. He's very active and involved on Gilmore's behalf on that, and says it's very much on track. The construction should take place in August. And they're very optimistic that the cell service for Verizon will start in October. Now, we all know how construction goes, so hopefully that will be, but it's getting close. So, and certainly in very, very much need. And finally, as you're aware, we are doing some background work on the possible expansion of Burton Court. The architects did their phase as we lined up. Drawings went to the state for the permit application, and drawings have gone out to contractors. We've started to hear back some that have decided not to pursue it, and we're still waiting for a couple of more. As I understand it, maybe one even today or tomorrow. I haven't gotten an update. So as that picture comes together, we'll see if it, how it meshes with our framework that we first embarked on. And if so, I will brief council and we'll see what the appropriate next steps are at this point. So, but it's where we wanted to be. It's quite frankly, probably a month later than I would have liked, but that seems to be the nature of the world in the construction world. Getting everybody's busy and getting the mechanicals and those people getting their work done. So, so that's the best status on the Burton Court. So, I didn't have anything else from my areas that I focus on.
Any other committee reports?
Can I ask a couple of questions of Chip, please?
Sure.
The Charter Review Committee is clearly not intending to bring any charter.
Microphone.
Is clearly not bringing any charter modification for the ballot in November. Is that fair to say?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's anything comes out of this, it will be for a time beyond that.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And on the broadband, as Michael reported the last meeting, Hunting Valley were very keen that our group should be in touch with them to talk about what's going on, because Hunting Valley are of the view that we need to cooperate somewhere, sometime, on some basis. And I was just curious, had the committee contacted Brian Coughlin since Michael made that report at the end of June?
They, according to the chairman of the committee, Ann Whitney, she talks to them very frequently.
Good, good, good. Thank you.
Any other committee reports? Okay, thank you. We're going to move to withdraw ordinance number 2023-18. And what do I do with that? Just go into reading the other?
Would you like an explanation?
Yes.
Okay. The original discussion was that to try to improve the process of building permits that go through the architectural board
Hold the
review
thing up to you more so you can-
is that we changed the dates of the meetings of the ABR and the historic subcommittee. So that's how it was originally drafted. We then subsequently met with the stakeholders that are involved, including Sandra and the mayor. And we had a really good discussion. I think Lori Deacon was there also. And it was determined that we should keep the meeting dates the same, but there was no reason that building permit applications in the historic district, why they couldn't go directly to the historic subcommittee. Keeping the architectural board in the loop, of course, with the application. And then the historic board would make a recommendation to the ARB, and it would cut down, at least a couple of weeks, if not more, of time to process these building permit applications in the historic district. So that's how I've redrafted it for this evening, which is on your agenda tonight for first reading. And I think there's some thought that there should be additional dialogue with respect to perhaps having a liaison member from the committee on the architectural board or somehow either formalize the report back to the architectural board from the subcommittee or do that internally through their own rules and regulations. So I think at least Councilperson Deacon has requested that this be on first reading and then there be some more discussion between now and August to maybe firm that up a little bit more.
And she has sent, and she's talked to John Spurk and to Sarah, the two chairs of the different boards, and they're okay with this. But there may be some more changes. It's trying to get it coordinated so the process works better. It's what it's all about.
Okay, so what you're saying is we approve it tonight on first reading, but then we can still amend it at least to some extent.
No, first reading, you don't have to
Just
do it.
first reading and no vote on it.
We're not going to approve it. It's just first reading and read it. And there may be something we want to add to it or whatnot at the second or third
Fine.
reading. So should we take a motion to withdraw this?
So moved. Withdraw ordinance 2023-18.
Do you have a second?
Second.
At 10.
No question. Next time it comes back, will that be first reading?
No,
No, this is first reading tonight is 2023-23.
We're removing the one.
Is
Oh, I'm
substituting
sorry.
for
I understand.
ordinance 18.
Okay, thank you.
At 10,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Yes. Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-23. This is a first reading. An ordinance amending section 1313.09A of the codified ordinance of the Village Gates Mills to specify the procedure for the Architectural Board of Review's Historic District Subcommittee to review and make recommendations to the board on applications for building permits in the village's historic district.
Okay.
Okay. Next is resolution number 2023-24. Chip?
This is a resolution approving and adopting the alternative tax budget for the Village of Gates Mills for fiscal year 24 and declaring an emergency. And this is first reading. We have time for this, Janet?
No.
No, we need to.
Okay, so it is a first reading, but it doesn't mean we're, okay.
The county deadline is Thursday, as I recall,
That's correct.
right, for this to get to the county.
And this is a administrative, I guess, requirement so that we can keep getting funded.
Correct.
So I think this is in our interest. That would, let's put it this way, our income tax discussion would be for naught if we don't approve this, because the number would go to zero, I guess, so. So,
This is for,
This is for property taxes.
well, this is property tax, I'm sorry, well, that would be,
And this is a resolution that's done every year at this time.
right.
I'll second it.
It's a state code requirement.
Okay. If I may, this is my second time through this process. I still don't know what this means.
I
And
agree.
and I think,
It's my seventh or eighth time and I share the same concern.
yeah, and I think the second time I ought to learn what it means. I mean, why couldn't this have been done sooner? I mean, why do we have to wait till the last minute to submit this? Isn't all the data available from January the 1st?
This is how the county wants us to do it, and we have to show that we will spend every penny of the tax that they give to us.
Todd, can you explain how I thought there was going to be a public hearing and then we changed the date of the council meeting?
Under previous Ohio Revised Code provisions, there had to be a public hearing. That was done away with a few years back. And I believe that Gates Mills had, as I recall, been doing public hearings on these things, which nobody ever showed up. Nobody ever asked questions. And so the General Assembly has done away with the public hearing requirement. And
Well, I'm basically none the wiser. I guess my question might be, the submission you make to the county, could I-
On our long range plan numbers.
Okay.
I Put them in there and.
okay, well, they've been,
They ask us for.
okay, well, they've been available for a long time. I mean, I'm just getting, why is this always an urgent matter? I mean, this data is available in plenty of time.
If council prefers that I do this, in April or May, I can do that next year.
Why not?
At your discretion. I'm just doing what's been done for the past 100 years in.
Yeah,
Gates
so.
I think those are both fair comments. If there's a reason, ability to move it up and do it at that time, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Thank you for the comment.
What's the word alternative mean? Does that mean there's another one somewhere?
The alternative is, that's what Todd was talking about. There used to be a formal tax budget process. So this form in this format is an alternative tax budget. That's what the county requires.
Procedure, and they call it the alternative tax.
All right, I'm getting there. Next year, I'll understand it perfectly.
Oh, good luck.
I'll send you the statute.
I'll work on it.
David.
Thank you.
So Chip, the motion to suspend was made by you and Ed, you seconded it?
Yes.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Now I move to approve resolution 2023-24.
Second.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next is ordinance 2023-25. Chip?
This is an ordinance to amend the annual appropriation ordinance number 2022-42 to increase certain appropriations and other expenditures of the Village of Gates Mills for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023. And this is in essence to move funds from the general fund to the,
This is just to appropriate. So we're not going to move funds at all. We're not transferring funds. We're just saying we're going to appropriate additional funds.
I can probably comment and clarify this
okay, sorry.
Yeah.
if I can. Chip, is that okay?
Like-
Yeah, so the traffic cameras will come into effect in August. when we did the budget and the appropriation for the full year, we didn't know when that would happen and what amount those would be. So at this point, the village has not appropriated any funds to pay the Lyndhurst Court or GATSO or anybody else. This piece of legislation allows us to appropriate up to that amount of money, $390,000, to begin the process of paying GATSO, the Lyndhurst Court, and anybody else that's relevant for the traffic enforcement camera. This doesn't mean we're going to spend that amount of money. It does give us approval to spend up to that amount of money. How we got the amounts is as follows. The chief and I and Janet have had a couple conversations. There's two large pieces. The regulations in the state require the Lyndhurst Court to be paid, I believe, $15 per citation at the time the citation is issued, not the time the citation is collected. So if you use some rough estimates that the chief has put together based on average flow of traffic, call it 200 tickets per day for those people going over 16 miles an hour, and you assume 30 days, and you assume $15 per ticket, you come up with about $90,000 to $95,000. So that is what, and we use 2 months. We did 2 months because the way the receipts will come in, the citations will be sent. People can pay them or not pay them. They may throw them in the mail and in the side of the mail and not look at them. They may dispute them. If they don't pay in a certain amount of time, they come back with a second notice. And they can do the same thing. They can pay it, they can not pay it, they can dispute it. Eventually, all those tickets may or may not be collected. But until a ticket is collected, the village doesn't get a dime. So we provided essentially 2 months of working capital to be able to pay the Lyndhurst Court. We're not giving them a check for that amount of money tomorrow, but to be able to give them that amount of money in the first 2 months as working capital to comply.
Good.
The other 100,000 roughly is for us to be able to pay GATSO. So GATSO will get, I think, as you all know, a certain percentage of the ticket. They aren't paid until the cash comes in, so we don't have the same working capital requirement to fund GATSO the way we do the Lyndhurst Courts. And we used essentially about a 2-week float. So that amount, the 290,000 to be specific, allows the village to write checks and to pay for the costs of running the system.
Okay, but in a cash flow sense, we won't pay GATSO until we receive the ticket proceeds, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
Chip.
just out of curiosity, the money gets paid to the court. And I mean, we pay the $15. If somebody pays a citation, does the money come directly to us, or does it go to the court and then they pay us?
I believe the court's required to collect the money, so I believe the court gets the money.
And do we know how long they're going to sit on it before they turn around and actually send us some money?
We will be on them every day.
Okay, good.
The nice thing about this system, the way it's set up, is that there's four parties that all have a vested interest in making this work. Obviously, we don't want to be issuing citations that we can't collect for cars that don't have valid license plates or whatever. The court's got a lot of money and they don't want to be flooded with a lot of citations that they grant that then they don't chase down. So they'll have a vested interest in earning their $15. GATSO has a huge vested interest since they put up all this money up front. And they need to be paid for all their equipment, their time, and their computers. And we are funding, we're kind of the bank. We're funding this thing for the first month or two. Once it gets going, this will be more like a deposit, that will be reconciled every month. But we have a desire to get this going and to collect every dollar we can to pay ourselves back and to earn for the service we're doing.
I understand the appropriation amount, and as you said, it's not money we pay until we have to. The amount for GATSO does sound, well, obviously, from a cash flow standpoint, we're not paying that out till we've already collected, so it's not we're out that extra money. But the money to the court is going to sit there as implicitly
That's an investment.
an advance.
But also, to be practical here, we've got to find a way to work this with the court. We don't want to be issuing checks every day for $15 for every citation that goes out. So we're going to propose that we estimate what the first month would be. Some of the numbers I just gave you are the basis of that calculation. And essentially put an amount on deposit that will be then drawn from every time there's a citation, as opposed to writing checks literally every day for a batch of citations.
Yeah. Makes
This
sense.
gives workability to work with the court and GATSO.
Janet, is that all right? Okay, thanks.
Good, thank you.
It changes, as those of you that have been involved knows
Yeah.
a fair amount.
So I move to suspend do we want to do this now? Because we're about to gear up, right, in August? So we want to approve this tonight?
Yep.
So I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinberg.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
And now I move to approve ordinance number 2023-25.
Second.
Eton,
Yes.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press,
Yes.
Steinberg.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Next is resolution 2023-26. Chip?
I think this is what happens when you miss a council meeting, that you get dinged and have to do all the next resolutions. Well, this one's important. This is a resolution authorizing additional funds for professional services provided by CT Consultants under an agreement for the village's comprehensive plan. We have finalized negotiations and discussions with CT, so we know what the final invoice amount will be. This was after negotiations, and so this requires that we need this additional money, and then we'll be completely closed out with them. And obviously, they have delivered the final report. So I would move to suspend the rules because, well, I guess we don't have to suspend the rules. We're just going to leave it as a declare an emergency because that gives 30 days.
You have to suspend the rules as
You
well.
got to suspend.
Well, you have to suspend the rules to pass. I'm sorry. Okay. So I move to suspend the rules. I get confused.
Good.
All right.
Can you give us some color, Chip, first before we
Sure.
start voting? I mean, how much did these guys think they were entitled to? And how did the negotiations go and how did they do? Did they do a good job or not? That sort of thing.
The amount of hours that they spent was significantly exceeded what they thought going into this. And they did alert us to some of the numbers. They sent some preliminary invoices to us. And we asked to have that broken down to what was in scope versus out of scope, and broke down all of the reasons. And there were the items that we've cited in this resolution that we thought were warranted. And quite frankly, the numbers that they submitted were 3 times the number, so we negotiated 1/3 of that. The hours that they spent, they tell us, and I suspect they're right, greatly exceeded what they billed us. They quite frankly knew that we weren't going to pay much of this, and so they just stopped adding the hours. I will say that the consultant, even though she knew that she was spending a lot of time that the firm wasn't going to get paid for, did a wonderful job, stuck with this right through the end. We never lost any of her attention, right to literally the last day of the report. And I think they just realized that they had misbudgeted the cost of doing it. We'll all form our own opinion as to the merits of the comprehensive plan. I'm sure we'll have discussions on that at the meeting. But I do give a lot of credit to the consultant for sticking with it. And we were very clear, those things that we were satisfied with, Sandra and I, and very clear on those things that we were not pleased about. And she certainly more than understood, and didn't accept it, but accepted the circumstances. So I think those of us that have been in the consulting world, you never like to have it happen, but it does happen occasionally where you miss misscoped a job and you're kind of trapped in it. We quite frankly were worried that as this became clearer and clearer that, you know, would we get a call saying, gee, sorry, but either you pay us what we're charging you or we're going to stop work. That never remotely happened. And we're very appreciative of the consultant for doing, you know, really for the last 5 months, she was operating largely for free. So certainly for the last 3. Sandra, would that be consistent with your sense? So, you know, we probably could have negotiated even harder, but there's a certain fairness here. We certainly weren't 100% clean from the village standpoint of kind of hurdles that we put the consultant through on this. So we feel that this was a very fair final settlement and certainly recommend approval.
Can I make a couple of observations, Chip, if I may?
Talk into the microphone.
Sorry, the initial bid they made of 57.5 was $20,000 lower than the next bids we saw. I'm
Yes.
recollection.
Yeah, I think that's about.
So the other consultants we spoke with, one of whom was very good, one not so good. They made bids which were exactly the same as the invoice you're now suggesting we pay, $80,000, give or take. And so it seemed an old trick for consultants is to underbid the job. And I worry that that was part of what happened here. And we'd have realized that if we'd have stuck rigorously to monthly invoicing, which the contract said we should. And it seemed to me that there was a lag after we got through January. They weren't submitting monthly invoices. I've asked for them each month and there weren't any. So I don't know why that happened, because one of the elementary stages of contract management is monthly invoices. And are we over? Are we under? Is it going the way we should? And so I think it got out of control, and that bothers me. That's just my observation.
Well, that certainly was one of the factors that we took into account when we were negotiating with this final invoice. But there were a lot of things that we asked too, that increased the cost. Going back to the beginning when we had more interviews, we had 23 more interviews than were scheduled. We had the December council meeting. We had a lot of input from the advisory committee about the survey. So it got longer and required more analysis. And then there was a request from advisory committee to distinguish among the neighborhoods and get analyses for each of the neighborhoods. There was a change to the postcard that we mailed out to the community, and when we did get the survey back, it needed more results more analysis because it was a longer survey. So, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, you're absolutely right. And that was a frustration to Chip and me too, that we didn't get it on a monthly basis.
We talked to her about it constantly. Again, I wouldn't put her at the top of the heap as far as administrative skills. She would tell us that the firm did not provide the support that she was promised. And so this probably goes deeper than just our consultant. Sandra and I certainly kept measuring that, if they want to keep doing the work and they don't bill us for it, then we keep asking, but and we might have been able to head off at least some of the fact that they were incurring some expenses that we might have been able to tell them that they really didn't need to if we had reviewed it. But consultant was very diligent. Anytime somebody asked for things, she tried to be responsive. So, it would have been nice to have been on track. I don't feel that this is particularly outrageous. Probably, if anything, we should have been smart and just not trapped ourselves. You don't want to put a budget out there for public knowledge that says, even though we've, the contract says 57.5, let's tack 20,000 on top of it, because they already know that you're planning to spend more. So you do have to kind of keep that under wraps. But I think this is a as you said, compared to what we would have paid, and I don't think the out-of-town consultants we would have paid for travel, and I don't think I think given the nuances and the nature of how this unfolded, I probably would have had a significant overrun with them as well. So I don't know.
But the first appropriation, the one we did last year, that was for out of scope work, right? That wasn't included in the contract. It was stuff we asked for. Is this one in scope or out of scope or a mix?
Well, I think the summary of it, when you add all of this up, we're paying 79,000 whatever, and the contract was for 57.5. So we're paying about almost 22,000 that would be out of scope. Not out of scope. Well, I mean, out of scope from the original proposal, but things that we felt that we
Correct.
asked for and certainly condoned. So
Chip, is this amount final? In other words, is it approved by not just Chris, but by her organization so that if council approves this, we're complete with this?
we have an email confirming that, and we should be getting the invoices here. The invoice, or I don't know, she talked about maybe they're doing it in two forms. I don't know, but it will total
Thank you.
that balance. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we?
Suspend the rules approval.
Chip made a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Anton,
No.
Allworder,
Yes.
Press,
No.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Welsh.
No.
Okay, gentlemen, do you want to give us an example of exactly what you want to do now?
Let's finish the proceedings here.
We can't do anything now.
We've got a 3-3 vote, doesn't the mayor?
We got to vote
decide?
on the resolution, don't we?
Still doesn't total
Need
5
4.
votes, and so it'll just go to the next meeting in August.
3.
so is it, how many votes do we
Takes
have?
5 votes to suspend the rules,
Right. Okay.
and then only got 3 votes.
The reason I.
Stay on the agenda.
Wait a
Is because at council, a number of people, both on council and in the audience and people I've met in the street, were concerned about the level of expenditure we were committing to this process. And I think there are people who have some thoughts on this, not necessarily ideas, thoughts. And I think they ought to be invited to come and make public comment if they so choose at the next meeting, because the public comments here now are at the end of the meeting. So there's no opportunity for people to talk about this, and there ought to be. I think this was a contentious issue. And that's why I think having them wait possibly another month for the last $16,000 is not unreasonable.
Would you play that out for me, David? Let's just play out that meeting and the public comments. Do you think that means that we're going to not pay this amount? Do you think this means we're not going to pay the invoice? Do you
I
think
don't know. We'll vote on it when the time comes.
based on a few people from the audience standing up saying they don't like this and they didn't like us spending it?
Maybe a lot of people. I don't know. They need to be given the opportunity. Okay. That's my view.
David, you are a representative of the village and empowered to make decisions.
Hmm.
What's your decision? What's your standing on this?
I don't understand your question. Sorry.
How would you vote? I mean, you did vote, but what is your opinion about?
I don't want to vote on this until I've heard the opinions of other people.
How many people do you need to have tell you? 3 people? Do you want we had 800, we had 700 people participate in one form or another in this process. Do we need 700? Or how many do you need to make a decision, David?
More than I've had and more than are sitting here tonight.
Really?
The whole idea of 3 readings is to give the public the opportunity to come and give us their point of view. And I think we should be doing that. We haven't done that tonight. This is the first reading. Second reading, yes. So next month, we'll talk about it.
David, I understand your concerns on process, but the reality is this isn't news. I mean, we've been talking about this since August of last year. And so the fact that there isn't enough information out there, we approved this in August of last year, and these are all things that we as council approved, these overruns. I mean, this is You and Michael wanted to have more meetings, more public input, that costs money. So others asked for more meetings, more information, more input. And those things add up. And I think is this a good thing that we're over by $22,000? No. Certainly take taxpayer dollars seriously because I am one of them. But in my opinion, these were all things that were done to make this a better process in the end than where things were. So I don't know that you can ask for more meetings and more public input, and then when the bill comes, say, well, I don't want to pay for all that stuff. So that's
Did
just
we-
my view on that.
Did we have more meetings then we're in the scope?
No.
I don't recall that.
We had a workshop where she attended and whatnot. That wasn't part of the original.
Workshop.
So
I
there was a
really
council
don't think you
workshop
want to get into all of the reasons.
You can move on.
I really don't think you need to
Well,
get into all the reasons, guys. You can look in the mirror to find a lot of the reasons. Okay,
Excuse me.
leave it at that.
Chip. We've taken a vote. We're not suspending the rules. We'll talk about it next month. What's the problem?
It's fine.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Council matters. Anything? Business from the audience. Go to the microphone, please, and identify yourself. Thank you.
My name is Mark Shoag. I live on Brigham. Just a comment on what I just heard here. Someone said that the consultant said their hours were 3 times what they billed us. Didn't Chip, did you say that? I can't remember which one of you said that. But if they're saying that they worked 3 times what they, or 3 times the number of hours that they're billing us for, I mean, on the surface, it sounds like, wow, they're really being magnanimous about it. But underneath the surface, it sounds like the billing is BS. Because if you can charge 3 times, if you really worked 3 times the amount you're willing to bill, I've never heard of that. And my experience with MedMal Consulting is that people who work by the hour and bill by the hour find ways to bill extra hours. It's not hard to sit in on a meeting and then you bill for 3 more hours because I sat in on the meeting. I mean, 80,000 is a lot of money. And then I just, one more comment and I'll be quiet. I know a couple of seniors in this town who are hurting because of inflation, who could benefit from a little extra money. And the idea that we're just going to fork over another 20K, it's a lot of money to some people.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, need a motion to adjourn. Oh.
One comment. The
Chuck,
brochure that was sent
you
out,
got to stand up and talk in the microphone. Thank you.
the brochure that was sent out to explain the cameras and the thing, I think it was an exceptionally good job.
Yeah.
And, I
Yeah.
congratulate the police department for putting that together. It was comprehensive, accurate, and I just thought they did a really good job.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Motion to adjourn?
Can I just add one little footnote to the consultant fees, just so we're clear, we're talking about taxpayer money. The monies is coming out of the ARPA funds, so it's not, it is large taxpayer money because it's coming from the federal government down through and to us, but it is not taxes that our local residents are being levied or paying.
Yeah, but my recollection was that the ARPA funds could have been spent on other things.
Sure.
I don't buy that.
Just a point of clarification.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Anton,
Yes.
Allward,
Yes.
Press, Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner. Yes. Walsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.